So I'm telling you, on the margin, there's going to be a legion of people this year that do that homework and get long Bitcoin. And so to me, I think this is an $18 trillion asset. If it takes 10 years, so what? If I told you that you could hold this asset, it's 100,000 right now, and at the end of 10 years, it'll be worth $1 million. Go back and look at Apple, NVIDIA over the last 10 years and say to yourself, okay, we have something that's very obvious. It's right in front of us. And there are people that said, I can't buy Apple, it's too expensive, it went up 10x. I can't buy NVIDIA, it's a fad stock, it went up 15x. And they missed it. I'm not missing Bitcoin. I'm not doing it. If Bitcoin is digital gold and we have $600 billion of gold on reserve at our bank, in the Federal Reserve Bank, you're telling me we couldn't put $75 to $100 billion of Bitcoin on reserve?
The dynamics of Bitcoin's explosive potential are broken down by Anthony Scaramucci as institutional demand and its fixed supply continue to conflict. Because of its limited supply, Bitcoin's prices are expected to rise even with modest portfolio allocations from funds and corporations. Despite its inherent volatility, Scaramucci believes Bitcoin might hit $200,000 this year. With an $18 trillion market valuation in the next 10 years, it equates to $1 million per coin. He urges naysayers to reconsider their position by drawing attention to the similarities between Bitcoin and other disruptive technologies, as well as by analyzing its past performance. For more updates on cryptocurrencies and the digital asset industry, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and enable post notifications if you appreciate this kind of analytical information. Thank you for watching and enjoy the video.
And what I say to people, I have yet to meet a person of above average intelligence that does the homework on Bitcoin that doesn't go towards Bitcoin. I have yet to meet the person. I did 25 hours of homework on Bitcoin. I read the white paper. I talked to hundreds of people on Wall Street. 25 hours on Bitcoin. I hate Bitcoin. I don't want to go anywhere near it. Not one person, Stan Druckenmiller, Paul Tudor Jones, Larry Fink himself, Abigail Johnson, do the homework on Bitcoin, go towards Bitcoin. I hated Bitcoin. You know who else hated Bitcoin? Michael Saylor. But he did.
Right.
Ask him. Get him on the podcast. He'll say, oh, it's a fad, it's passé, it's ridiculous. He didn't understand it. I hated it. Why did I hate it? Didn't understand it. Michael Saylor did the homework, and then when Michael Saylor got done doing the homework, he couldn't sleep. Couldn't sleep. He said, Anthony, I couldn't sleep. Once I figured out what Bitcoin was, it's like, how am I going to buy enough of this network? How am I going to do it? Okay. And I said to him, because I got there after him, I said the same thing. Now, I've done in the similar way what Saylor has done, just smaller. So I'm telling you, on the margin, there's going to be a legion of people this year that do that homework and get long Bitcoin. And so to me, I think this is an $18 trillion asset. If it takes 10 years, so what? If I told you that you could hold this asset, it's 100,000 right now, and at the end of 10 years, it'll be worth $1 million. Go back and look at Apple, NVIDIA over the last 10 years and say to yourself, okay, we have something that's very obvious. It's right in front of us. And there are people that said, I can't buy Apple, it's too expensive, it went up 10x. I can't buy NVIDIA, it's a fad stock, it went up 15x. I can't buy Amazon, and they missed it. I'm not missing Bitcoin. I'm not doing it. I said at the end of 2021, Bitcoin would be 100,000 at the end of 2022. I got my ass kicked. So I made no price prediction in 2023. When the Bitcoin ETF came out, and I guess Bitcoin was like 35.40 at the beginning of the year, I said, it's going to 100,000. And people scoffed at me and said, well, you made that prediction already, dummy, and it didn't happen. And I said, yeah, I got it wrong because I thought the SEC chairman was going to apply the law the way the law was written. I didn't think he was going to be arbitrary and capricious in the application and administration of the law. In fact, that's exactly what the court said in the ruling. Okay, so now you get the thing approved. It's at 100,000. There's going to be a supply shock, Ryan. And so there's no reason why this can't trade to 200,000 over the next 12 months.
200,000.
You don't have enough Bitcoin in the marketplace. So what happens? I need to own it. My board just told me I got to get a 1% position. Okay. What do I got to do? I got to go buy a 1% position. You start buying it. And it's not. It's liquid. It's the deepest crypto market, but it's not super liquid. $10 billion will move that market.
Yeah.
Because and I know Bitcoin could trade to 75,000. We had a move from 70 to 50,000 recently before the election. So yes, it could go down from here. I'm not saying it's going to go straight up. Nothing goes straight up. Just don't sell it.
Anthony Scaramucci discusses the emotional turbulence that comes with Bitcoin investing. He remembers that when Bitcoin rose from $17,000 to $69,000, he was regarded as a visionary, but when it fell to $15,000, he came under heavy fire. Scaramucci's faith in Bitcoin's long-term prospects is unwavering in spite of these fluctuations. He cautions against panic selling during market downturns and stresses the value of maintaining a broad perspective. Also, a quick reminder, only a small percentage of viewers are subscribed. If you enjoy deep dives into crypto and finance, hit that like button and subscribe. It's free and helps the channel grow. Now, let's get back and hear what Anthony Scaramucci has to say.
Hey, it's a cycle. Everyone goes through the same cycle. I don't understand it. I don't like it. I then start to understand it. Oh, wow. This is another commodity. This is a digital commodity. I got to own it. And it's just about how one of the smartest investors in the world, who's a polymath, who's one of the greatest philanthropists in New York City with the Robin Hood Foundation, and how he's a cutting-edge 70-year-old, Ray Dalio. Okay, these guys looked at this thing, they did the homework, and said, I'm in. And so that's what we did. And by the way, when I bought it, my clients, people wanted to fire me. You want to hear the story? I buy it in October of 2020. It goes from 17,000 to 69,000. My clients are calling me, telling me that I'm a visionary and I'm a genius. We go from 69,000. We flash crashed. I think the low print was like 12,000. I don't know if it was like overnight. It was, remember. So let's call it 15,000. We went from 69,000 to 15,000 in 22. And I had clients calling me, the very same clients called me a genius. You're an imbecile, and I'm selling out my position. Okay. First of all, I wasn't a genius. I'm not an imbecile, but I did see something. And now you go from 16,000 to 100,000. Other people now see it. And so I don't want my clients to miss it. I don't want your podcast listeners to miss it. So that's why I wrote a book about it. This stuff gets horse traded. So you'll probably have 200 won't get sold. They'll probably buy another 400,000 or 500,000 Bitcoin.
What?
Over the next.
You
don't think
this
that's
is
gonna
real?
happen?
It's okay. So, we've been in crypto for a while. The fact that we're even talking about it still honestly blows my mind.
Well,
but yes, we had a sitting senator talk about it.
Let me tell you why I think it will happen, okay? Trump wants it to happen. And he's got the Senate Banking Committee. Tim Scott wants it to happen. He's going to be the chair of the Senate Banking Committee. Basent wants it to happen. If you're telling me there are no Democrats, and I don't believe this because a lot of Democrats voted for the Saab 121 bill. If you looked at the dispersion of vote, it was a bipartisan approval of that bill. And by the way, Ryan, it was if you were 40 or 50, let's say you were below the age of 60, you voted for the bill if you were a Democrat. If you were a fossil like Elizabeth Warren or Sherrod Brown, you voted against it. So if you're telling me there are no Democrats that are going to vote for that, then I'll say, okay, then we're not going to get it. But I don't see that. I think Ro Khanna would vote for it. I think there's a lot of Democrats that look at it and say, if Bitcoin is digital gold and we have $600 billion of gold on reserve at our bank, in the Federal Reserve Bank, you're telling me we couldn't put $75 to $100 billion of Bitcoin on reserve? Is that what you're saying? And by the way, you may even liquidate some of that gold to do that. You're saying that's not possible. Where people like Larry Fink and people at Franklin Templeton, Jenny Johnson, and people like Abigail Johnson at Fidelity, and you name the different people that are recommending allocations. And the comparisons are if I say if it's digital gold, my buddy Michael Saylor will get mad at me because he calls it digital property. I mean, he's called me and said, I heard you on that podcast. It's not digital gold. But let's just, for the sake of this argument, let's say that it is digital gold to these people. And if we're at that point and we're in a modern society and Trump wants to make a statement and we believe, rightly or wrongly, that the Chinese are going to move to buy Bitcoin. And they're going to move to make it a strategic reserve asset for the Chinese economy and the Chinese government. And if that's the case, what are we talking about? We're talking about $70, $80 billion. To put it in perspective, we've got a $6 trillion budget. So you're talking about 1% of it, 1.5% of the budget to buy Bitcoin, but we're also talking about it over 5 years. So you're talking about 30 basis points of the budget over 5 years, which could, emotionally strengthen the dollar and could put the United States on better competitive footing, or at least tie the United States with other Western nations. Said differently, if you put me in that seat, forget about the fact that I own Bitcoin. If you put me in that seat and said, is it in the United States' national interest to have a strategic reserve in Bitcoin? I would say yes. And then if you said to me, why? I would say 3 reasons. Number one, I do believe it's digital gold. And I think the future is changing, and I would want to have it on our balance sheet like we do gold. Even if you said I had to sell $100 billion of gold and replace it with $100 billion of Bitcoin. Number two, your generation, forget about me, I'm an old fart, but you're a young man. Your generation is going to live further and deeper in the digital world than me.
Anthony Scaramucci eloquently outlines the reasons why Bitcoin's development is both necessary and unavoidable as a game-changing asset and as a tactical opportunity for the American economy. He explains the typical cycle of doubt and acceptance that investors go through before realizing that Bitcoin is a digital commodity with enormous potential. Influential investors like Ray Dalio, who did their homework, bought Bitcoin, and recognized its potential as a hedge against future uncertainty, are compared by Scaramucci. He talks about his personal experience, saying that when Bitcoin reached $69,000, he was seen as a visionary, but when it fell to $15,000, he was mocked. He does, however, stress his steadfast faith in Bitcoin's long-term course, advising investors to maintain their composure in the face of immediate volatility rather than letting it affect them emotionally. Scaramucci also draws attention to the geopolitical ramifications of Bitcoin, contending that, like gold, it is in the United States' best interests to keep it in its strategic reserves. He emphasizes that the U.S. may be at a competitive disadvantage if it doesn't adjust as the globe moves more and more toward a digital economy, particularly as countries like China consider Bitcoin to be a strategic reserve. According to Scaramucci, Bitcoin is a contemporary reserve asset that may strengthen the dollar's position internationally while also appealing to younger generations who are heavily involved in the digital economy. He ends with a clear message. In order for governments, organizations, and individuals to stay ahead, Bitcoin represents not only a financial innovation, but also a generational transformation that they must acknowledge and embrace. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for daily insights from the crypto world.